boy, The Force Awakens blasting all kinds of box office records. Official numbers so far, $238 million in the U.S.
Star Wars Episode 7 is breaking all kinds of box office.
Star Wars. Love it, hate it, it doesn't matter. The Force won't stop printing money. Just like with Marvel, Disney paid billions for Star Wars, and now it's everywhere you go. The Last Jedi, The Mandalorian, Solo, Rogue One, Kenobi. Every success, though, comes with humble beginnings. Were you aware the original concept for Star Wars was a space opera? Furthermore, did you know that George Lucas gambled his directorial salary on success?
Oh, there it is. There's my name. It's another check for Daddy.
And by doing so, he carbon froze his place in history as the most profitable options trader of our time. If you don't know the story, then watch further on how Lucas actually made his billions. By understanding his style, you'll see opportunities in your own life. How? By executing the right trade. You can make a windfall later in life, in one form or the other. A long time ago, in a suburb far, far away, a young 29-year-old director named George Lucas lived in a small one-bedroom apartment. The year was 1969, and George was working on one of Hollywood's lowest budget films with an abysmal production cost of $750,000. He eventually filmed in a record 28 days to save on costs. The movie was American Graffiti and was released in 1973. It became an overnight box office hit. The film got nominated for the Best in that year's Academy Awards, as well as Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Film Ending. George Lucas had made it to the big leagues. George loved science fiction as a kid. Growing up on his family's walnut farm, he fantasized about outer space.
The year is 1987, and NASA launches the last of America's deep space probes.
In movies such as Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. When Lucas came of age, though, all of the sci-fi available had turned into dark dystopian tales. He wanted to make something fun for teenagers to relate to. His idea was a movie shot in space. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button, hit subscribe. Let's get back to the video. In a used future style of cinematography, unlike the pristine shots of the future, which was the norm at the time. He wanted a style where the audience could picture used candy wrappers being tossed around in the cockpit of a spaceship.
Out of my seat. Just keep your pinky on the yoke. Try not to mess anything up.
Fox Studio identified the project as a massive risk, but with Ladd Jr. having loved American Graffiti, he agreed to give it a shot. It would be an understatement to say he wasn't expecting much. Early drafts of the movie were nothing resembling what eventually became the movie we know and love today. The script was a cringe-worthy 132 pages and was titled The Adventures of Anakin Starkiller. Han Solo was a frog-like alien. The Force was called the Bogan. And Luke Skywalker was an old grizzly general. Over the years of hard work, the script evolved into what we now know as Star Wars. Episode 4, A New Hope. Thus was the backdrop going into the now legendary salary negotiations. The greatest options trade of our time. Quick primer. Options contracts can be used to lock in prices ahead of potential higher moves. For example, airlines may purchase options to buy oil at the current price of $50 for the next year, as protection against a potential move to $100. As he was mostly unknown until sudden success of American Graffiti, the salary he would receive for Star Wars would be a huge payday. $1 million in 1970, if inflation adjusted in 2019, would equal roughly $6.6 million. a substantial amount for a 30-year-old just hitting it big. What he decided to do though is what separates legends from the rest of us. While negotiating his pay with Fox, George said he'd be okay with getting paid just $150,000 to not only direct but also write the script. In exchange, he asked for the merchandising and sequel rights. The studio thought Lucas was insane, as merchandising toys up until that point was a disaster. The studio had just come off a financial debacle in merchandising their recent movie Dr. Dolittle, where they were stuck with the unsold stocks of toys no one wanted. They didn't want to repeat their mistake. And sequel rights to a dud, the studio deemed the project so risky they would have been happy at this point just to make their production cost back. And so George Lucas executed his options trade, and history was made. The $850,000 in pay that Lucas had agreed to forego was the cost of the options contract he bought. In options trading lingo, George Lucas had paid $850,000 to buy a call option with no expiry date on the merchandising and sequel rights of Star Wars. And this call option would eventually grow to a $4.1 billion fortune known as Lucasfilm. That was how much Lucas sold it to Disney for in 2012. In other words, his $850,000 call option turned into $4.1 billion profit.
Most impressive.
An unprecedented 482,253% investment return. A life abundant with options. George Lucas was without a doubt viewed as a nutcase by his peers. Those close to him told him he was crazy for foregoing his salary for the rights to a ridiculous space opera he called Anakin Starkiller. By believing in his vision, he executed the most profitable options trade of our time. And as a result, he's one of the world's most successful and wealthy men with a net worth of $8.2 billion. Going for a straight paycheck isn't always the best life choice. Doing so may be short-sighted, costing you a massive future windfall. If you look for it, you'll see options trades executed everywhere in life. Giving up part-time work for an unpaid internship in hopes of a lucrative job offer after beefing up a resume and contact list. Sacrificing money and time for further education, whether an MBA or a data science certificate, to advance a career and pay grade. Foregoing some salary for shares in a startup. There's an options trade out there you can use to implement your life vision. You'll give up something in hopes of gains of more abundance. Once you find it, ignore the haters and execute the trade. That's what George did. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button, hit subscribe. I will see you in a couple of days. Be outstanding.